it's fairly self-evident, or fairly evident in the sources, that gender simply wasn't problematized the way it is for us. So there's not a lot of questions about like, what is a woman? What is a man? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? It's not that these questions weren't raised. It's that they came within a society where the answers were being given through forms of life and culture and work, where, and I'm speaking especially of most people. So sometimes what will happen when people look at the Middle Ages is they will look exclusively at aristocratic and royal classes, which makes sense because we have the most records of them. But what we're trying to understand is primarily what life was like for most people.
The common people.
Yeah. And what Ivan Illich points out, what Federici points out, and what seems to be the case is that there was a real distinction between a male and a female world, between men and women. And this was not conceptualized or lived out as these two incomplete parts that sort of join together to make a whole. Rather, this was conceptualized and lived out as two different ways of being people, two wholes, as it were, two worlds that could intersect and coincide. And this is why Illich ultimately relies on the image of the dance as the kind of archetype of the male-female relationship prior to modernity, that you don't have in a dance a sort of incomplete woman and an incomplete man joining to sort of make this complete androgynous third. Rather, you have a specifically male perfection and a specifically female perfection now engaging in each other without annihilating or destroying the difference. So what does this look like practically? Well, one of the things is that marriages, typically speaking, happened pretty late. So you could expect in the Middle Ages, especially in France and England, I mean, again, there's a problem of sources here, but women would probably get married in their late 20s. And one of the reasons this is important to point out is that what it suggests is that there was a usefulness and a reason for being and a kind of life available to women outside of the specific work of reproduction, which also formed a specific part of a sphere of women, which really was their authority. So I'm trying to point at two things at once. So on the one hand, they really did have authority over things like childbirth and labor, and this wasn't simply like an allowed thing. It was like a profoundly defended and protected. It would have been shameful for a man to like attend a birth or to sort of be in the position of midwife. There was a definite authoritative sphere of female only existence. Right. And we'll talk about this in another episode, that this logic actually went all the way to the very top of society, where you had the religious women as the ideal. So unlike our age and unlike the pagan ages before it, Christendom is the age which had a male and a female ideal in the consecrated virgin. So the religious orders were ultimately the greatest flower of the society, not the marriages. Okay, so there was these autonomous and authoritative spheres of existence, and then there was a honor and shame relation in which there was a positive communal desire to belong to those spheres.
Yeah, which I think if you hear that for the first time, it can sound exclusionary. Like it sounds like the little girl like running up to like the boys' room, like knocking on the door, "Let me in."
Yes.
But I think something that really is missing in our current era, and I think a lot of women will immediately recognize this, is that we don't really have an experience of women working together, and if we do, it's kind of oddly artificial. Yeah, it's like we're a women's only business. We support other women. We only hire women. Yeah. And I suppose it could be really fun to actually. That is the environment in which I work.
Yeah, I would say I think of like anarchist. That is my experience right now. Anarchist lesbian stationery collectives or something like it's.
No, I work for a consignment store.
Okay.
There's no men there.
Sure. Yeah, I should probably stop reading things and start just like looking around.
But that is, it is kind of more artificial and intentional there's not really a situation where you have, I mean, if you just think about the traditional notion of women's work, it has to do with the home and with children. And that experience is a fundamentally isolated one in today's society. Like if you're being a stay-at-home mom, you don't really have a choice but to just not really see anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can, I mean, like you don't have to live that way, but it's a lot of effort. Whereas in the past, like you were working together as women, multiple generations. It's not just something that happens on Thanksgiving when the family is together and all the women are in the kitchen. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like a little taste of that. And like women really enjoy that because we want to be around each other. And it's fun having the different generations of women around. And it's really difficult, I think, being
and it was such
a mom
an absurdity,
without like adults in your life.
And it would be such an absurdity to imagine like a male entering into that space and saying like, I see that you're incomplete in your sex, and that you know, it's like obviously you're enjoying a completion amongst yourself. I think that's so cool.